Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Illumishade, Another Side of You, out February 16th on Napalm Records. The album has 14 tracks, 58 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a modern Swiss metal band. When you look at the design of this record, you're going to find an album that's very linear, that is very balanced from beginning to end. There's not a lot of ebbs and flows, there's not a lot of changes. It's a record that stays on course, that stays on path. And being 14 songs and 58 minutes in length, that is a long record. That is a long experience. It allows the album to even define better that sense of balance and linearity throughout all 14 songs. Now, when you have a record with this length, with this style, with this approach, you normally have a sense of consistency, which is a great thing, but sometimes from that consistency you end up with a little bit of repetitiveness. So how did they approach that second part of the equation? I think they tried to infuse a few songs to not break away from the overall experience of the record, but definitely create some ripples, some nuances that allows the album to have at least some breaks, some pauses, in order for you to better appreciate the uniquenesses of the songs and not necessarily concentrate on what makes them equal. Songs like the intro track, like the interlude that they have nearly the midway point. The ballads on this record do that because they have a lot of keyboard, piano pieces and they're really infused from that aspect. Some of them really stripped down, and this changes the nuances because those tracks become by nature a little bit more atmospheric, and the album is not very atmospheric in general. So having these songs helps create breaks, helps create pauses, and enhances the songs around it, making the overall experience more fluid, more entertaining, and allowing the album to be easier to digest. As far as the sound is concerned, this is a modern metal record, but not what I was expecting coming in. Normally, records that have this sort of tag or this sort of approach are heavily influenced by what the keyboards and synthesizers are doing, almost becoming an image of what was done in the 80s, where the keyboards are just the drivers of the songs, they infuse melody, they create atmosphere, they are the be-all and end-all of the sonic experience of a record. This album, while using that element, it doesn't allow that element to be the one that drives the experience of the record. This album is actually heavily focused on the guitar sound. And a couple of things you could say about the guitar sound on this record. It is the main protagonist. I don't think there's another pillar within the sound experience outside of the guitars that has the impact that they have. I also like the fact that the guitar sound felt slightly isolated from the rest of the sound experience. So when you're listening to this album, it doesn't feel like there's a wall of sound coming at you. There is a little bit of a wall of sound, but the guitars are one of those big bricks that stands outside of that wall, and having the guitars slightly separated from the rest of the sound gives them even more of an impact, puts them even more in the forefront. It allows the listener to focus more on that element, and even songs where the guitars are perhaps not as heavy, you still feel a sense of thickness, a sense of heaviness coming from them because how much they jump into the forefront and how noticeable they are. But this is an album that does have some heavy guitar parts. I wouldn't say that this is a heavy guitar album, but it's a heavy guitar driven album with some heaviness in a few tracks, with some volume, with some thickness that gives them a very nice punch that makes them break through even better. A lot of metalcore influences specifically on those heavier moments, and that is a good influence to have, because if you think about modern metal, metalcore definitely falls in line with what today's modern metal is all about. So having a more melodic modern metal influence mixed in with a metalcore influence creates almost a new sound, a new experience that has parts or great parts of those two worlds combined together, allowing you to see songs differently, even though they have a lot of similarities with what songs are providing when it comes to those two individual genres. But the guitar performance throughout the entire album definitely deserves some attention. The solos on this record are phenomenal, really bright, bringing a lot of energy, a lot of light, a lot of life into the songs, infusing the right the right brightness in order for you to break away from some of that heaviness, or even to break away from some of the melancholy and atmosphere that you're getting on keys that strip down some of the ballads and some of the songs. I love the dynamics. The guitars are always infusing life, regardless of how they're coming across, regardless of what texture they offer. Their impact is undeniable, and one that surprised me on the positive side. Now, the other pillar of this album are the vocals. Fabienne is phenomenal. I honestly feel like she's one of the best vocalists right now in the game, and sometimes her voice doesn't get its dues because of the work she does with Elvidi is slightly different from the work she does here, and the voice sometimes takes a little bit of a backstage considering how much instruments, how much the music is giving the listener. On a record like this, that modern style approach where things are a little bit more simplified, the album still has texture, but the sound is not overwhelming. It's easy to digest. It's an easy listening experience. The vocals allow themselves to also separate from the sound and be a little bit more in the forefront and be more noticeable. So this is one of those records where you can really see her range and you can really enjoy what she gives vocally to the music behind her. The music really pushes her, puts her on a platform, puts her on a plateau, and then she's able to do everything that she does extremely well. And on a record like this, it almost feels like she's free of any chains. She is herself, she's able to do what she does best and put together an incredible performance from start to finish. An album that has great sound, an album that has sound that creates room, an album that sees itself grow from where the predecessor was. I think where they still could do a little bit better, or they could grow into a little bit more, it's taking in a little bit more of atmosphere and sprinkle that throughout the album. The ballads definitely had that, but I think they could have been even better from that standpoint. I think this album at times felt very grounded. It felt safe considering how slightly outside the box it was created. But I feel like this is a band that has so much energy, but it also has an emotional drive behind it. And when you have an emotional drive behind the lyrics, behind the sound, behind the vocal performance, infusing some more atmospheric elements would also bring that emotional baggage to light, into life a little bit better. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Elegy. This is the second track on the record, but technically the first song, because the song before this one is an intro. So this is technically the first song on the album, and it has those heavier guitars. It's really a metalcore, modern metalcore track, if you will, because of how the guitars come across, the heaviness, the consistent heaviness of those guitars, definitely having an impact specifically in the verses, because the track, once it moves into the chorus, it becomes more melodic. The vocals help break through the thicker side, the bigger side, the heavier side of the sound. It's really interesting to see how her voice is able to break through that wall and jump into the forefront and really drive the experience. It's a modern melodic metalcore style track with a huge bite on the guitars, and it's a track that sets the table and it sets the mood for what the rest of the album is going to be all about. Next we have Fairy Tale. Now this is a ballad. It's a piano, it starts off at least as a piano ballad, really melancholic piano melody, and then you start to see this landscape of this song kind of come together. The track starts to add some layers, and those layers don't really change the vibe or the mood of the song, but they definitely change the sound. It allows the sound to grow, but the mood stays very consistent as you move along. It has a bigger chorus, as you would expect from a ballad. You want the verses to be a little bit more contained, and you want the song to become more explosive in the chorus. That's exactly what this track has. Incredibly delivered vocally, haunting at times. The guitar solo is phenomenal, and it injects a lot of energy to a track that doesn't always have energy available. It feels very depleted at times. Last but not least, this is not only my favorite ballad on the record, but my favorite song on the album, Hummingbird. This is a piano-driven ballad. I was going to say from beginning to end, but it's not the case, because the last third of the track changes and morphs. It explodes into something else. But for the first two thirds is a very stripped down piano and vocal duet, if you will, and that is what carries the song. I like the fact that the vocals are extremely layered. extremely textured, but for a song that for the first 2/3 is super stripped down, adding that texture, adding those layers to the vocals, it increases the volume of the song in general without taking anything away from that piano bass, still keeping the track feeling very stripped down, but at the same time making the song feel bigger. Then you start to see other elements coming in. First, the drums. The drums come in, add some substance, the pianos are still there, the vocals still texture, still layered, still driving the experience. And then last but definitely not least, the guitars come in with heaviness, adding an exclamation mark into the song before the track then returns to its original format. More atmospheric, more stripped down, more piano based. This song really goes full circle. I like the fact that it doesn't really have a guitar solo. It has a heavy guitar riff, if you will, but that matches well. It's a much needed explosion within the track, explosion of heaviness, an outburst, if you will. But I love the fact that it goes back to its original form, making the song feel really complete in its essence, in what it provides, and in the atmosphere that it creates. The most atmospheric song on the entire record, the most perhaps layered and textured song vocally, but one of the most haunting songs that this album has in store for you. This is it, Illumishade with Another Side of You, out February 16th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.